Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Turfgrass Epistemology. My name is TravisShaddox. Thanks so much for joining me on Tuesday morning. We're going to go over a video and do some commentary on it today, but we're also going to be doing a lot more, so I'm going to get started here pretty quick. Real quick, the schedule for this week and next week are normal. I'll have another episode tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be going over an article on plant growth regulators. We're going to go over a video today on micronutrients. Then we're going to go over two websites, one on this article, one on this product he's going to talk about, and then another one on the same product, but from a different manufacturer. And then at the end, I'm going to show a micronutrient and macronutrient leaf deficiency diagram. And I'm going to kind of walk through that at the end so you can at least have some sort of general idea as to how to approach diagnosing nutrient deficiencies looking at the turf leaves. And I'm from a comment yesterday on the live stream on the members only channel about using doing an article on the plant growth regulator anew. I'm going to try to see if I can find an article, science article on anew, which is a plant growth regulator used in lawn care, and I haven't been able to find really one yet. I'm sure it exists somewhere. If I find one, then I will do another PGR episode on next Monday morning for the members only, just with that product. But if I can't find one worth going over, then I'll switch from PGRs into sort of like a potpourri sort of month in December where we have a variety of different topics I'll be going over on topics that don't really fit into a category. For example, there's a couple articles I'm going to go over on dog urine spots in lawn care. Believe it or not, there's actually a couple of articles, newer articles, on what is actually causing that. And there's a lot of videos online about people think they know what's going on there. And of course, they're not accurate. And there's some science articles that will talk about how it is that urine is actually causing dog spots in lawns. So I'll go over stuff. It's stuff like that. It's weird stuff that don't really fit into a category. But I'm going to get started real quick because this episode is probably going to be quite long because I have several things I'm going to be going over. So stay on until the end because I think the chart at the end with the nutrient deficiencies might be quite useful to people, and I'll show you where to go find that. It's available for free. Not from me, it's from a university. So today, we're going to hopefully get through this without me screwing stuff up. Let me see, get this on. Okay, so the episode today is about micronutrients, and we're going to be going over another episode or another video from the channel Turf Mechanic. I've gone over one of his videos before. This is the same gentleman that recommends ignoring the turfgrass label on Micronutrient and applying it at 1.5x the bag rate. That would be illegal in some states. You cannot do that because of there's some phosphorus deficiencies. There's some phosphorus restrictions in some states. And the Micronutrient bag actually says on it a specific rate for Florida, which is lower than the labeled rate for Micronutrient to be applied in other areas. So my point is, we're talking to a person. We're going to be watching a video from a person that actually recommends ignoring the labeled rate on fertilizers. And please don't do that. So that's where we're coming from here. There is a massive amount, historic levels of Dunning-Kruger in this video. And I wanted to use this video today to introduce micronutrients, because I'll be going over micronutrients probably sometime in the spring. And so without further ado, let's get started. Sorry, I just ran back up my hill trying to get back to the camera before the episode started. Sorry. Okay, I'll catch my breath. Here we go.
Hey guys, this is Brian Mounts from turfmechanic.com. Today I want to talk to you about trace minerals, trace elements, and micronutrients, things that we can put on the lawn. Lots of people put this stuff in the garden. Probably most people put this stuff in the garden. Those of us who are really into lawn care get it on the lawn.
Okay, so that's his introduction. And my voice is actually probably going to fail today at some point, but I'm going to try to get through it. That's his introduction, and the introduction is micronutrients and trace minerals. He's going to conflate the two, and we're going to skip ahead because he has a brief little introduction and his little spiel at the beginning, and we're going to skip ahead to where he starts actually talking about it.
All right, so if you watch my video that I published earlier this week, where I did my first main fertilizer application of the year to my lawn, one of the stars of the video, in my opinion, was the azomite that I put down on the lawn.
So azomite, I'm gonna show the label on that. I'm gonna go into a little bit of research on that. I wouldn't call it research, but it's like marketing research on azomite. And I'm going to show the label. Azomite, for those of you who don't know, is derived from volcanic ash. Okay. Now, we also commonly use the phrase potash in our industry, which is from potassium, which came from the potashes in fireplaces over the years, and they would leach that out, and there'd be some potassium in there, and they put that out on their fields and so forth. That's how potash came around. Anyway, those ashes are organic. They're derived from organic wood or leaves or whatever it is that you burned. With volcanic ash, those are more aluminosilicates, and those don't break down. Those were formed by some sort of geological process and are going to be there for a very, very long time. Okay, it's going to take eons for that to break apart, for any pragmatic sense, okay? So when you're applying a product like a volcanic ash to a lawn, compared to, say, potash or wood ash or some sort of organic, ash, those are two different things. One of them will break down. The wood ash or the organic ash will eventually break down. It's not going to cause or result in any sort of, or very likely it's not going to result in any sort of deleterious effect. But when you're dealing with volcanic ash, that is not going to break down. And those are very, very small particles, even if it's been pelletized. Okay? It comes as a powder and then maybe pelletized into a granule. That will break down. Now, what happens after that, I don't know. Long-term applications of a very fine ash product that will not break down. Is that going to move into the micropores? Yes. Is it going to move into it enough to actually result in some sort of problem in our lawns, in our soil turf systems? I don't know. That's the point, is I don't know, neither does he. And when it comes into this channel and a lot of things I say, I almost always say, don't do anything unless you have a good reason, because you might actually cause more harm than help. Okay, I don't know if this particular product would result in any harm. I don't know, but that's the point. I don't know. I don't know if it caused any help. I don't know if it caused any harm, but I'm not going to just throw it out there because it says on the bag it has a bunch of micronutrients on it. When it's a volcanic ash. Okay? So keep in mind, that's what he's talking about. He's talking about a volcanic ash derived product.
Now, a couple months ago, I woke up a very small section of my lawn in the middle of winter by doing a few abnormal things. One of those things that I did was applied micronutrients to the lawn. In fact, I applied this, Simple Growth Solutions Micro Booster.
Now, for those of you listening, he has a bag of a product called azomite, which is derived from volcanic ash, and then he has bottles of micronutrient solutions. Okay, these are two completely different things. So I want to make sure that's clear, is that when you're applying micronutrients to turf grass, you will almost never, ever see a response to it if it's in a granular form, with the exception of some manganese situations. I got that. Okay, manganese sulfate can actually do that. But that's the only micronutrient that I've seen consistently result in a response in turf grass when applied as a granule. But foliars are another issue. If you're going to apply it to the leaf surface and let it attempt to be absorbed through the leaf, then you're dealing with things like possible iron responses and manganese responses. But all these other micronutrients and boron and copper and zinc, those are very, very, very rare. In fact, I don't even know if it's ever been documented in the literature, in turfgrass literature. In corn, for sure. Zinc is fairly commonly deficient in corn. But in turfgrass, very rare, to the point where I've never actually even seen a bona fide documented case of them. So granular versus foliar micronutrients, you can't conflate the two, okay? One is extremely useful with iron and manganese being foliar, and one is almost completely useless, it being virtually any micronutrient except for possibly manganese. So keep that in mind.
Now, if you look at the label of
Now, I want to point out on the video, for those listening, you're not seeing this if you're listening, in his lawn, he has an area that it's obviously dormant. I think he might be in Oregon, or I can't remember where he's from. But it's sort of a hilly, mountainous area. And the grass is probably Kentucky bluegrass or fescue. I don't know what he has. And it's all dormant. It's brown. But there is one section that is very, very green. And that's the section I'm assuming, I'm inferring from what he said, that's the section that he pulled out of dormancy using a micronutrient application. Now, let me show what was on this actual, or is he going to show it? He's going to show it right here. What was actually in the micronutrient solution right here.
This, or any micronutrient fertilizer, you're going to see the analysis on it. This particular one includes magnesium, zinc, iron, manganese, sulfur. And that's it. That's it.
So here's the label. Guaranteed analysis, like you said, magnesium, zinc, iron, manganese, and sulfur derived from all these lignosulfates. Okay. Now, first of all, don't be delusional and don't be conned into applying these micronutrients as a quote unquote chelate if it's a lignosulfate or if it's a glucoheptanate or a gluconate or a polysaccharide or anything like that, because those are going to be listed through APCO as a chelate. But when it comes to the soil, they're not chelates. And I have a publication on that exact topic that included those components as I listed them: lignosulfate and glucoheptanate. They don't have any ability to retain or to resist oxidation once the metal hits the soil. So, for example, take iron, and you apply iron or manganese or magnesium to the soil with these quote unquote chelates, these lignosulfates. They're going to be oxidized just as rapidly as if you didn't have the chelate at all. Okay. When you have EDTA or DDPA or EDDHA, those true chelates, even those chelates are not useful when the pH exceeds the limit of the soil pH exceeds the limit of the chelate's efficacy or usefulness. In other words, EDTA is not useful above pH 7. Okay. EDDHA is quite useful regardless of the pH, but DTPA is not useful above like 7.5, 7.6. So don't be delusional thinking I have a chelate, I'm going to put out this liquid as a chelate. You can just put these out as a salt, which all these were a salt. They just added it into a lignosulfate solution and formed magnesium sulfate or magnesium lignosulfate. Okay, so you can just apply straight iron sulfate or straight manganese sulfate and you will stain everything that you sprayed on. Everything. I don't care what it is. Pool decks, wood fences, kids' toys, your shoes, whatever. It will stain everything you sprayed on. Okay? That will happen with the iron sulfate and the manganese sulfate. Not magnesium sulfate, but the iron and manganese it will. But you don't need to pay extra for these chelates. If you really think you're getting something out of it, you're not. You're not getting anything additional out of these chelates. So this product, when you put it out, has iron and manganese in it. Now, there has been double digits, 20 or 30, I don't know, 20. I don't remember how many iron studies I've done. More than 10, less than 20, something like that, with liquid iron and granular iron. And every single study, without exception, of liquid iron applied at the correct rate has resulted in a green turfgrass, without exception. Whether it's on cool season grasses, warm season grasses, Bermuda, Tiff Eagle, St. Augustine grass, whatever, centipede, Kentucky bluegrass, it doesn't make any difference. Every study applied with liquid iron sulfate resulted in a greening grass. Almost every study we've done, not every, but we saw a response from manganese sulfate applied as foliar. I take that back. There was a St. Augustine grass study that actually published that showed very little response. But it is possible, is my point, to see a greening response from manganese sulfate applied as a liquid. Okay, that is possible. All this other stuff, it's almost never documented. Magnesium, almost never. I've seen one tiny little blip on a radar from magnesium. Zinc, almost never. Sulfur is very common. So we got sulfur, we have iron, and we have manganese in a liquid solution of quote unquote micronutrients. And then you see this greening response. I don't know if that's what he did. He could just be completely faking it. But this big green square he's showing on his lawn, I don't doubt it at all that he could very well come to that result from an application of a product like this. It has liquid iron and liquid manganese in it. Okay. So this I don't doubt whatsoever. Very possible to achieve this from a liquid. Apply that same rate of iron and manganese and all this other stuff as a granular product to that lawn right next to it. And you will see very likely, assuming there's no nitrogen or phosphorus and potassium or anything like that in the granule, you will probably see nothing happen. Nothing happen at all. Okay, so he's going to talk about applying a granular product, and what he's showing on the screen is the effect of a liquid product. Just be clear about that, okay? We go back to where we were, if I can find it. There we go.
That is, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5 micronutrients right there. These are things that lawns and grass and plants in general need in various consistencies, or quantities, I should say. But the thing is, that's only 5. Now, if you can...
Yeah, no, here we go. Here comes the Dunning-Kruger. So get ready, guys and gals. That's only 5 micronutrients. And you can go look in the literature. Again, what I said, don't trust what I say. Don't believe anything I say. Go to the literature and base your management practices off of the scientific literature. I'm going to do my best to interpret or give you information that I'm aware of in the scientific literature. In the scientific literature, I just told you, there's virtually no evidence to support the application of any micronutrient other than iron and manganese. In some very strange, rare situations, there might be a little bit of zinc occasionally, very rare, but that's it. No molybdenum, no copper, no zinc. I'm sorry, no cobalt and all this other. There's almost never a response to that. I've never seen it. But iron and manganese almost every time. Well, let me back up. Iron almost every time. Manganese is kind of hit and miss. Okay. Well, there's only 5 in this thing. There's 5. We apply micronutrients, but there's only 5. I don't care about really anything other than iron and manganese in micronutrient blends. Nothing. And I'm wide open to changing my position on that. All I need is some compelling evidence.
Count those 5 and then add in nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. We're up to 8. Those are the major macronutrients. Then there are some like semi-major macronutrients. Your calciums and irons and magnesiums. Was that on here? That is.
I'm in a good mood, so I'm going to let it slide. Some of this stuff slide. Let me back up just a little bit. I'm in a pretty good mood, so I'm going to let some of this nonsense slide. But let me just back up and see what he said. I was typing something in.
Your calciums and irons and
wait.
semi-major macronutrients.
Semi-major macronutrients. So there is actually major and what do they call it? Major and secondary macronutrients. So I'll let it slide.
Your calciums and iron.
Iron's not a macronutrient. Iron's a micronutrient. But maybe he to his credit, or to his, in defense of him, he doesn't have any like a chart or he's not reading off of anything. He's doing this live. So I'm not going to knock anybody for, he may have just misspoke, and that's completely understandable if he misspoke. But just keep in mind, iron is not a macro, it's a micro.
And magnesiums, was that on here?
Magnesium's a macro, that's true.
Anyway, we're up to like borderline 10 here, and there's a few others that arguably could be considered almost macronutrients. But
no, they're not. So what do you mean, arguably? A macro, he doesn't understand the definition of what is a macronutrient and what constitutes the definition of a micronutrient. So here's the macronutrients for those of you. I'll give you a little insight as to what I'm going to show a little bit later. Here's the macronutrients. Of course, hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, you can't do anything about those. And then nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, magnesium, and calcium. Those are the macronutrients. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow. It's never going to change. There's 6 macronutrients for plants. Okay. Well, not including carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Okay. Which you have no control over. So that's it. 6. Again, you're applying micronutrients, being iron and manganese, in the form of iron sulfate or manganese sulfate, so it comes with a macronutrient. It's not a bad thing at all. Sulfur is commonly deficient nowadays. So to be frank, if I'm a superintendent or I'm a lawn crop operator, I couldn't give 2 flips where the response is coming from, whether it's coming from iron or whether it's coming from sulfate. I don't care. What I know is I'm seeing a response to it. So in the case of iron sulfate or manganese sulfate, is it coming from iron or coming from sulfate? With iron, it's almost certainly coming from iron. With manganese, it might be coming from sulfate, but who cares? Just make sure it's in the sulfate form and you're good to go. But those are the 6 macros: NPK, sulfur, magnesium, and calcium. Okay? There's no arguable about it. Lucky I'm in a good mood.
The thing is, there are many other micronutrients that you don't even get in these prepackaged micronutrient lawn fertilizers.
Okay, so there's many other micronutrients that you don't get. Now, okay, that's fine. There are some macronutrients that you don't get. As I mentioned, I couldn't give two flips about those micronutrients because we never see a response to applying those micronutrients. But just so we're clear, I'm going to show this again later at the end of the show. The micronutrients are here listed as well. Micronutrients. Okay. Iron, manganese, boron, chlorine, zinc, copper, molybdenum, and nickel. Those are the micronutrients that are plant essential micronutrients. Okay. Occasionally, that will change. Occasionally, we'll have some new, will be an addition to it. They'll have some new research come in and they'll find, oh, indeed, this element does perform a necessary function and the plant will not complete its life cycle or reach its potential in the absence of that particular nutrient. So, for example, I don't know what the most recent one was. I think it might have been nickel was added like 20 years ago or something like that. I can't remember. Okay. So occasionally when new evidence comes in, we add to it. But those are the micronutrients. I don't care how, it's going to get funny here in a minute. There's many of them that aren't on here. One, I don't care because the soil provides all the micronutrients you could ever need with the exception of iron and manganese and occasionally maybe a little bit of zinc occasionally, but that's so rare. It's, almost not worth even mentioning. All the other ones, boron and chlorine and copper and molybdenum and nickel, show me a deficiency to those. And then if you can, by somehow show me a deficiency to them, show me where the application of that element resulted in a response. It doesn't happen. Okay. It's so rare. It's not even worth talking about. All right. So we continue. Let's go.
So one thing that I find to be, prevalent in the lawn care space is lots of people don't understand that when you see something that says trace elements and minerals, that is a synonym for micronutrients.
It's only a synonym for people who don't know what they're talking about. It's not a synonym. There's minerals and then there's plant essential elements. Minerals are derived or comprised of elements. So for example, langbonite or kieserite. Those are minerals that contain elements from the periodic table in them. Okay. Goethite, hematite, all these things. Those are minerals. It's not a synonym at all. That is not the case at all. The plant does not take up minerals. The plant does not absorb minerals. It takes up elements, plant essential elements. So you can put out all the whatever, I'm trying to think of it, like goethite, like an iron mineral. You can put all the iron you want as a goethite. It's never going to enter the plants. It's never going to form soluble iron. It's never going to be soluble. It's not going to take up the mineral. So please be clear. This is not me being pedantic. They are not the same. They are not synonyms. Okay? Minerals are comprised of elements. The plant takes up the element, not the mineral. But that's an example of most people don't understand. Yeah, you don't understand either, Brian. Okay? So get off Mount Stupid from the Dunning-Kruger effect. Come back down to reality, and then we can start building your confidence in the correct way using evidence.
The thing is, the micronutrients in this are even more micro than these.
What does that mean? What does that mean? It's more micro. Someone please help me. What does that mean? They're more micro. I don't know what to do with that. I love his videos, man. We're going to go over another video on liquid dethatch on his channel at some point. It is fantastic. What do you mean more micro? I'm gonna have to get a napkin. I'm freaking crying. I'm laughing so hard. Oh my God. Oh man, these micros are more micro. That's fantastic, man. I've never heard that. Should that go on? Should we update the BS criteria? It's more. These micros are more micro. Oh my God. I'm gonna have to add that on to the BS criteria. Holy Christ. Oh my God, that's great. These are more micro. Jesus Christ. Oh man, I'm sorry. That is great. That is fantastic. Oh my God. What does it mean? Tell me what it means. I don't know what it means to say more micro. I mean, it's like, oh Lord. Oh God. Okay. Collect myself. Okay, here we go. More micro. Now we're dealing with more micros. Okay. All right, here we go.
Azomite has somewhere around, I don't even know what the exact number is, but it's somewhere around 70 different micronutrients are in this product.
How many elements are on the periodic table? Let me ask you that. 70 micronutrients in azomite. That's what he just said. There's 70. How many? Let me Google. Hang on. Let me take this off real quick. Put it on a PDF. Or let me go to this real quick. How many elements are on the periodic table? Like 118. Okay, there's 118 elements on the periodic table. And there's 70 micronutrients in this bag of azomite. There's only, what did I say? 7 essential micronutrients or whatever I had on there earlier. It's 8 or whatever the number is. There's only 7 or 8 that the plant actually needs. There's only 2 that actually ever show a response. How do I turn this back on? Okay, that ever show a response when you apply it. But this bag has 70. Okay, this is such BS, man. This is such nonsense. But this sort of thing can be very, very compelling to the average homeowner. Extremely compelling to the average person who doesn't know, that there's something, doesn't take the time to look up plant essential elements or know the basics of soils and plants or whatever. It can be I'm assuming it can be very compelling. I need this one because it has 70 micronutrients. It may have 70 elements. It may have 70, minerals. That may be the case. But when it comes to micronutrients, you moved in, when you use the word micronutrient, you've moved into the world of plants because everything else is just an element. We've denoted specific elements as micros or macros based upon their concentration and the plant's need for them. Okay. So when you say micro, you moved into the world of plants. And there's only 7 or 8 that even need to be addressed. Hang on a second. Give me 1 second. Hang on 1 second. Okay, I'm sorry. I had to collect myself. I'm sorry. So, unfortunately, this sort of nonsense can go a long way in convincing people that indeed they need to buy this particular product because Brian Mounts, the turf mechanic, thinks there's 70 micronutrients in it. It's fantastic. Oh, Lord. Okay, here we go. Continue.
This is, when they say trace elements and minerals, this is coming from this volcanic ash eruption from eons ago.
Yeah.
It is mined out of the state of Utah, and it contains an enormous amount of micronutrients.
There's 2 definitions of enormous. I mean, it could be like the quantity of micronutrients in that bag, meaning like it could be like 20% iron or something, or it could be the number of micronutrients in the bag. In either case, that doesn't exist. There's not a lot of anything in there other than silicon dioxide, probably, and aluminum, because it's an aluminum silicate. Or, there's not a lot of any element other than that. And there's not a lot of plant essential elements in the bag. There's only 6 or 7 plant essential elements, full stop. Okay, so there's, in either case, he's delusional.
In very small quantities. The thing is, many of these...
Okay, so he said very small quantity. So he's talking about the number of micronutrients, not the quantity of it, the amount of it. In the other case, and so there's probably all 7 micronutrients in there. Who cares? Okay, there can only be... Well, what was it? I don't keep saying the wrong word. How many did I pull up on that chart? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 micronutrients. There's only 8 micronutrients. Okay, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how many other elements are in there. There's only 8 that the plant needs. That's all I care about.
Things lawns and other plants can use and will use, and they will benefit out of the state of Utah, and it contains an enormous amount of micronutrients in very small quantities. The thing is, many of these things lawns and other plants can use and will use, and they will benefit from.
He doesn't know that. He's just making stuff up. This is really a case study on BS. I mean, he doesn't know. He definitely does not care. Okay, he doesn't care what he's saying is true. What he's doing is, I don't know what's going on in his mind, but I'm inferring from his behavior and what he's saying that he is interested in getting in front of the camera and in convincing people of whatever he's convincing them of. I don't know if he's trying to convince them that he's smart or trying to convince them to buy the product or whatever he's doing. But it's a case study. He doesn't know. He doesn't care. He's just spewing BS, probably off the marketing sheet on the back of this bag, probably. And he didn't take the time to look it up. It's just all nonsense and BS.
Just imagine it like this. If you were to eat oranges, like literally an orange, it's really healthy. You get tons of vitamin C. You're going to get some sugars, so some carbohydrates in there. It's going to be a healthy thing to put into your body. That's kind of like fertilizing the lawn with like a balanced NPK fertilizer. You're getting good stuff. But can you imagine what your life would be like if you only ate oranges?
So if I only applied NPK, is what he's saying. He's making the relationship between oranges and NPK. The difference and the problem with your analogy is the plant, if I'm only eating oranges, but I'm standing in a mountain of food, and occasionally I get some food that I take in, okay, that's the equivalent of the plant. The plant, if you only apply an NPK to it, it's getting everything else from the soil, okay? It's getting everything else it needs from the soil. You don't need, well, I mean, I shouldn't say that. I mean, there are some instances where there are other elements that need to be applied. But most of these other micronutrients that you're saying are all supplied from the soil to the plant. The plant has evolved in a way that even in low, quote unquote, low iron soils, it can still survive. It may not grow to your desired quality. You may need to apply some supplemental iron for some color here and there, manganese occasionally here and there. But the plant is very, very good at harvesting these nutrients from the soil, even if you see on the soil test that it's low in these elements. Okay? Continue.
I have no idea what that would be like, but it would probably be pretty weird, and something going on in my body would start getting affected by the lack of all of the other nutrients that oranges don't have.
Yeah, well, your analogy is horrible because the plant is getting everything else from the soil. In fact, it doesn't even need nitrogen per se. Okay, it just needs nitrogen because if without it, it's not going to grow to the expectation of the human. Okay, the human expectation is why we have to apply a little bit of nitrogen. The plant will go out there and it'll grow. It's probably not going to be acceptable in most cases. It depends on the plant. Nowadays, we're breeding a lot of things that you can grow a lot of grass with no nitrogen. But we need a little bit of nitrogen only to get it to grow in, get a little bit more dense, and provide a little color to meet an expectation of a human being. That's it. So you don't need to apply hardly anything else except for the need to meet human expectations. That's it. The plant's fine. The human being is the one who needs who needs to see the different densities and color and all that stuff. And that's fine. Okay, but the plant's getting all this stuff. So your analogy is awful, Brian. It's horrible. But thank you for saying it. It gives me content for my show.
That's why we put stuff like this down. Now, we can put NPK fertilizers down in the lawn. We can even grab not trace really, but the micronutrients and apply that to the lawn. But under the best of scenarios, what are we only applying? Like maybe 8, 9, 10 to 12 nutrients onto the lawn on any given, growing season?
God, I hope the majority of people listening to the show are not applying 8, 10, 12 elements to your lawn. Please. After this show's been on for a year and a half or whatever it is, I hope there's been enough content and enough evidence I've presented that has convinced you that you need to apply almost in every case a little bit of nitrogen to meet, to meet your expectations. Occasionally, in very rare instances, you might need to apply some sulfur occasionally. Maybe if you have some phosphorus deficiencies or potassium deficiencies, which are extremely rare, but those can happen. You might apply a little bit of that, but they're so rare, it's worth only including them when you see a deficiency. And then if you want color, you spray out a little bit of iron or a little bit of manganese or both. There's products that have both in them. I hope that's it. And really, I hope it's just nitrogen unless you see a need to a good reason to apply these other elements. You're applying 10, 12 elements. That is exceedingly wasteful. Very, very expensive way to go. Okay. And he's saying, well, we're only applying 10 or 12 elements. We need to apply 70. God.
When we apply something like azomite, we're getting a ton of stuff. Many more things than we can even purchase individually. And many things in there that we don't even understand how the plants use this.
Yeah, you don't understand. I can agree with that, Brian. You don't understand. I completely concur. Okay. That is true. I mean, who in their right mind would get on YouTube and say you need to apply 70 micronutrients to a plant? All you got to do is Google plant essential elements. That's all you got to do. That's probably the first link on Google. It'll show up and you'll see all the plant essential elements. And you go to the micronutrients, you'll see those. Now, you might not know that those micronutrients are almost always supplied from the soil. I get that. Everybody here's listening is good at something, but it's probably not soil chemistry, soil nutrients. I get that, okay? But you can at least narrow it down to that list. You don't need to be delusional and be conned into buying products for another 60-something elements, okay? It doesn't take a whole lot to at least have some rationality or good reasons or logic to your process. 70 micronutrients. I mean, to me, it's so funny. I can't help it. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Oh my God.
To perform better and to stay healthier. Now, this I keep raving on the azomite. Azomite is not the only one. Here I got a couple other options here.
Yeah, we have some more nonsense. We have some more BS down here too. Langbonite and green sand from the same. I think it's Down to Earth is the one packaging these products. I don't know if they manufacture, but they distribute it.
Green sand is another option. This is a marine sediment layer. I want to say that this comes out of kind of the New Jersey area. It might.
Yeah, I don't know what green sand is. I tried to look on their website. I couldn't find it. Maybe they discontinued it. I don't know. But let me be clear. I wouldn't be applying anything from marine sediments without an extremely good reason. Okay, because you start taking stuff out of the marine sediments and putting it on lawns, you're dealing with potentially some very harmful side effects that might come from the salts or the sodium levels that might come from these sediments. I don't know green sand. I couldn't find the label. I'm not saying that it has that. But I would be extremely skeptical and careful before I start just saying, oh, it's marine sediments and they apply it to gardens, so I'm going to go out and throw it on my lawn. I wouldn't go that route. I also wouldn't immediately reject it. I just would be completely neutral and say, I'm not going to do that at all. Show me some evidence. And it doesn't come on their company website, which I'm going to show you. And it doesn't come on marketing sheets. Okay. So be very, very careful. I've seen this a lot. There's some other products, mainly in Europe, that come with, like, I forget the names of them now. It's like CO2 or C something or other. I can't remember what it's called. But they're mined from the ocean, which there's nothing necessarily wrong in the sense of it's taken from the ocean. But if it also comes with sodium and salt, you better be very, very careful.
Be mined from other places. Green sand is another mineral deposit that contains a ton of micronutrients.
So
or trace elements.
Micronutrients and trace elements. He keeps conflating the two. It looks like sand, so I don't know if it's literally sand. I mean, if it's mined from the ocean floor, then it probably is just like sand size particles, like just sand. It might not dissolve, is my point. So with that being said, there are many publications showing the benefit of applying light coats of sand, especially to very tight mowed turf, like less than 250 or something like that. On putting greens, this is done every day. Right now, as I'm speaking, there's superintendents on golf courses or their staff applying very light coats of sand to their putting greens. It helps fill in the low spots. It helps with the uniformity and the coverage in terms of the smoothness of the green, the ball roll, and the firmness of the green. So if all he's doing is applying straight sand, I'm not going to say that wouldn't actually result in some benefit. It could. But just because it came from a marine deposit and it has some other trace elements in it, those trace elements there's almost no chance you're going to see any beneficial response to that component of the product. Okay, so this is another example of like the composition division fallacy, where they'll say, hey, you apply this product and it has trace minerals in it, you're going to see a response, when in fact it probably came from something else in the product. Okay, and I'm not saying that would be a bad thing. It might be a good thing, but be aware that it's, there's more to it than just, it has elements. There's no need to believe that you're going to see a benefit to an element being applied that's not a plant essential element. Okay.
I want to say it's somewhere around 35 to 40 of them are in green sand in
35 to 40 micronutrients. Jesus Christ on a cracker.
Various quantities, and it probably is going to vary depending on the source material, like where the material is sourced from. You might think, there's only 35 here, but there's like 70 here.
I don't think that at all. What I'm thinking right now, Brian, if you're asking me, is I'm wondering, one, how you became convinced that that's true. What road did you go down to become convinced of this misinformation and that it's actually true? And then secondly, I'm wondering, what can we do to help you come back up the rabbit hole? That's what I'm wondering. I couldn't give two flips about any of those elements in that granular fertilizer, including iron and including manganese, if it's in there. Couldn't care less. There's virtually no evidence at all that that's going to provide any benefit whatsoever. I'm going to show a little thing at the end here that has a little bit of work in it, but it's not really convincing. That's what I'm thinking. I'm not thinking about these elements at all. I want to know how you got convinced and what we can do to help you. That's what I want to know.
Why would you buy this at all? Well, green sand also has some additional benefits for soil conditioning. So if you've got...
here we go. Soil conditioning. Anybody want to put a bet on whether or not he's going to talk about soil compaction or soil structure or something along those lines? Anybody want to put any money on it? Okay. I'm going to pull up the BS criteria, the criteria for turfgrass BS disorder at the end, and we're going to go through it and see if he qualifies as a BS artist or not at the end. There we go. Let's see what he says.
If you've got really heavy clay soil, you can add green sand into it and it will loosen it up a little bit. If you've got really sandy soil, like magic, it does the opposite. It will actually help bind those sand particles together, that sandy soil together, and prevent some of the leaching that tends to happen in sandy soils.
So he just said you can apply it to clays and it'll help loosen up, and you can apply it to sands and it'll help too. Okay, just show me something, Brian. Are you just repeating and regurgitating misinformation that you're reading off of the label? If you're a victim, no problem. Well, I'm here to help. But you're going to apply it to help loosen the soil. You're going to apply sand to a clay to help loosen the soil, this particular sand to help loosen the soil, and you're going to apply it to a sand to help reduce leaching. That's what you just said. It's great.
It's a good it's a good soil conditioner. It even holds a good amount of weight, a good amount of water by volume. Like 5 pounds of this will hold like something like 15 pounds of water, or something pretty close to that. So this is an excellent option. Now I've applied this to my lawn as well, kind of over on my side yard, over by the dogs. If you're a longtime watcher of this channel, this I've applied everywhere, and I just did that this week. This is another product, langbonite. It's another mineral, but this one doesn't have a ton of trace elements in it. It's only got a few major ones. The big one is potassium.
Now, let me just say this about this langbonite, and there's also products like Kieserite. I think Kieserite has magnesium in it. I can't remember off the top of my head. This is an example of natural occurring minerals that may exist in your soils that may mineralize potassium over time into solution. If you're getting sand, depending on where you're getting the sand from for your top dressings, you may be applying a top dressing sand to your putting greens or to your sports fields that have a potassium-bearing mineral in it, like this product, langbonite, or like potassium-bearing feldspars or something like that. And when you're applying that top dressing sand, the last thing on your mind is that you're also applying potassium. You're not thinking about that at all. But it's not a bad thing necessarily, but you need to be aware that if you are applying potassium-bearing minerals in your top dressing sand, as this might be an example of a mineral that would do that, you might not necessarily need to continue to apply potassium because you're applying a mineral that's not going to be immediately soluble. It's going to slowly mineralize that potassium over time, and your potassium in your putting greens might actually go up. And that may or may not be a good thing particularly if you're in areas where you might have microdochium and you already have potassium in your soils high enough and you're applying more and more potassium. That might actually result in increased risk of some diseases. Okay, so be mindful of that. But this particular product, langbonite, I don't necessarily have an issue with it per se, as long as you have a potassium deficiency. It's very possible that a product like this could alleviate that, and it may, depending on the particle size and the quantity of the mineral in this product, it may actually provide potassium over time to be slowly released over time because it's in a mineral form that requires mineralization to become taken up by the plant.
A naturally occurring source of potassium, and I want to say this is mined out of kind of the New Mexico area. If you need potassium, you're going to get it in this. You're also going to get magnesium. So if you're in a situation where you're frequently putting dolomite down.
Yeah, I mean, it has 22% sulfur and 10% magnesium. I don't care about the magnesium. You'll almost never see a response to it. But the sulfur, let me back up. You won't see a response to magnesium hardly ever. You probably will never see in your lifetime a positive response to the application of potassium, except for in like California style greens or really high sand, acidic soil media. But you may very well see a response to this sulfur. It's 22% combined sulfur in this product, and sulfur is becoming more and more deficient. So here's an example of, again, the composition division fallacy where you may put this out and go, oh, the 0022, I saw a response to potassium, or it was the 10% magnesium, I saw a response to that. When in fact, it's probably, or very likely could be from the sulfur. And the reason that's important to you is this is not the least expensive or most economically efficient product to use to alleviate a sulfur deficiency. If you recognize if you do have a sulfur deficiency, then you can make a management decision based on that to apply the most cost-effective source of sulfur. And it's probably not from langbonite or, some mineral form of sulfur, okay? That's the importance of understanding the why.
Dolomitic lime on the ground where you're getting calcium and magnesium. This is a product that if you apply it because you need more potassium, you're getting the magnesium. So you can switch over to like a calcitic lime because you're getting magnesium in this. A pretty good healthy dose. I want to say something like 10% of this is magnesium. What I'm trying to get at in this video is when it comes time to fertilizing with micronutrients, you can buy dedicated micronutrient lawn products, but things like this, although they're probably not going to be as fast acting, well, this might be fast acting in terms of the potassium, but in terms of this, it looks like sand, like coarse sand.
It's been aggregated. I don't know this particular product, this azomite, but my understanding is it's going to come as ash. And they're going to aggregate that with some binding compound. I don't know what they use to bind it with. And they'll granulate it into a granule and then spread it out. But it will eventually dissolve back into an ash, or disperse, I should say, back into an ash. And that's my concern when you're dealing with volcanic ash products. If they're not going to dissolve, then you're applying a very fine aluminum silicate to your soil. And with enough of it, I would be concerned what would happen with the porosity and the water percolation in that soil if you put enough very, very fine ash, non-degradable ash particles in your soil. I wouldn't do that.
It's going to get incorporated into the soil and slowly change the consistency, change the nutrient density of your soil over time. Putting this down,
I think he's just talking about like the parts per million or something. I'm not going to knock him too much on that.
Probably not going to see an immediate benefit, but if you're putting a small dose of this down regularly, for me, my plan is to do this every single time I core aerate, because after I core aerate, the soil is loose and I can incorporate it further into the soil, deeper into the soil, and it will really assimilate in there a lot better. This is a long-term solution. This is something that actually doesn't even cost all that much, considering how much you get. I wish I could remember the price tag. It was here, I don't know, it's something like $35 to $40 for this huge 40-pound bag, 50-pound bag, as opposed to buying products like this that that require, liquid spreaders. You need a liquid pump sprayer to be able to put that on the ground.
Yeah, I would like, I'm being sincere here for a second. I mean, I would like someone to show me any turfgrass response beneficial, turfgrass response to granular iron, anywhere. It's never going to happen. I mean, there's one article I think I went over. It was some extremely strange situation where iron sulfate granular did show response in one of the papers back on the channel months and months ago. But it's so exceedingly rare. It's not going to happen. So I don't care if you go, well, granular, you can just spread it out. Well, foliar, you got to buy all this stuff. Well, then buy all the stuff, because if you're going to apply iron, there is no point in doing it as a granule. There's 0 point. And the same thing goes for all these other micronutrients with the exception of manganese. Okay, so manganese, you can see a response. There's a documented case of that. Snyder did that back in the 70s. Okay, so that's possible to do. I don't see the point in doing it. You could just spray it out. But I mean, if you're going to spread it out, I guess you could. But all this other stuff, well, you do these liquids, but then you got to buy the stuff. Yeah, that's right. If there's no other method to see a turfgrass response to iron that's been consistent than foliar applied iron. That's it. You can apply foliar and chelates if you want. You can apply foliar or all this other stuff if you want to. It's just you're not going to see much benefit to that compared to just straight iron sulfate soluble. The only benefit might come from a solution chemistry issue in the tank or the jug before you put it out, and possibly some staining issues on surfaces. Some of the chelates might actually have a reduced ability or reduced likelihood of staining surfaces. But agronomically, once it hits the plant agronomically, there's really not much benefit because you're circumventing the soil oxidation process when you're applying it to the leaf. So you don't need a chelate. Okay.
Now, there are some other granular products out there that you're going to get a good mix of trace minerals or micronutrients.
They're not the same, Brian. They're not the same. Minerals are derived of elements. Elements are what the plant takes up, not minerals.
But this and this combined are spectacular. They cover the board. Now, you don't want to over apply these things because like any good thing, you don't want to have too much of anything in your soil. You just want to slowly improve the soil structure over time.
There it is.
In your lawn.
There it is. I told you. I told you he'd say structure somewhere. So we're going to go back. We're going to open up the BS criteria at the end. So he did say structure. What else did he say? Something about I'll see it on the BS sheet and see if we can find it. But there's the structure. You're gonna increase the structure. You're gonna increase, enhance the structure of the soil. I love that. And then on top of that, he's aerifying. Aerification destroys structure. Aerification is needed sometimes for the turf needs. You're making you're adjusting the soil turf system to favor turfgrass quality or growth because you're actually removing some thatch or enhancing oxygen exchange or whatever the case is. But have no delusions. In that root zone where that tine went down, you are destroying soil structure. That's what you're doing when you're aerifying. Solid tine or hollow tine, needle tine, ninja tine, pencil tine, whatever you want to call it, whatever method you use, you're actually puncturing the soil and destroying the soil structure. And then on top of that, he's going to go, I'm going to increase soil structure. You're probably, I don't know, I'd have to do a study on it. You're probably resulting in reduced soil structure as a result of aerification. And you're probably going to result in reduction in hydraulic conductivity as a result of putting out volcanic ash on your lawn. That's not going to dissolve. It's going to remain as an aluminosilicate. That's what it's going to stay as. So you're probably, I don't know if you're harming it, but with enough of it, you're probably going to result in long-term harm or problems that you'll have to resolve at some point in the future if you continue to do that.
Langbonite is a product that I might be experimenting with as a way of getting some potassium on the lawn. I probably won't be doing too much of it because I probably don't need so much magnesium. But if you are regularly applying dolomite to your lawn, this is an option that will get you that same magnesium influx. I want to say it's about the same percentage. Dolomite is like 10% or so magnesium, and this is around 10% as well.
Let me just mention a few things about magnesium real quick. There's this presupposition in our industry that just permeates the industry, and that is you need to apply magnesium because magnesium is the center ion in the chlorophyll molecule, and chlorophyll is what makes the plant green. That's a presupposition. That's a sales pitch. That's a marketing flyer. That's a bunch of nonsense. Well, all that's true. Let me back up. It's all true what they're saying about the magnesium, but whether or not you see a turf response to the application of the magnesium is what I care about. And magnesium will remain soluble. It will not oxidize out like iron, and it will not oxidize out like manganese. Okay, it will remain, for the most part, in most normal soils, it will remain soluble in soils. Very rarely will you run into a soil that is low enough in magnesium to see a response to the application of magnesium. Okay, I've gone over some papers on that. And even with Mehlich 1 magnesium levels down in like 15, 16 range, which would, in that particular soil in Florida, the magnesium as Mehlich 3 would be a little bit higher than that, probably closer to 20. Even in those soils, there was not a turfgrass response to the application of magnesium unless the turfgrass tissue was removed. So you can get extremely, extremely low with magnesium and still not see a response to the application of magnesium. So the take-home message is, once again, like every other practice, don't do something unless you have a good reason. And the magnesium values on Mehlich 3 soil test have to get down low. Like I don't know if it's the case in every soil, but we're talking like 20 parts per million or less. If you're up in the 30s or 40s, there's almost zero chance you're going to see a response to the application of magnesium. You might see a response to the application of magnesium sulfate. That could happen because sulfate is generally, or it is becoming more and more common to see a deficiency in sulfate. But it probably is not coming from the magnesium. It's probably coming from the sulfate. So you get the least expensive form of sulfate, which is usually calcium sulfate or potassium sulfate, something like that. Okay, that's the least expensive form. So magnesium is really not one that you want to consistently put out thinking that it's going to turn the grass green because it's the center ion in the chlorophyll molecule. That's my take on magnesium.
I'll be experimenting with this a little bit. Now here, I got a couple of other products. I just wanted to let you know this right here, this is kind of like an NPK plus micronutrients. This is another product that I have used on my...
It's called Simple Enhance for those listening, ChemWise Simple Plant Food. Looks like it has 1%. It's looks like it's a 111 NPK with some iron and manganese in it.
On before, this one has a small percentage of NPK plus some micronutrients, but
derived from molasses. God. Potassium nitrate, potassium phosphate, urea, ammonium phosphate, iron EDTA, and manganese EDTA. So you're very likely to see a response from applying a product like that. The nitrogen and the iron is very likely to see a response if you apply it at the right rate.
Again, you're only getting iron and manganese in this along with the NPK.
So what? Explain to me why I would need something else. You got NPK, iron, and manganese in this product. Now, I wouldn't buy that product because it's very low concentration and probably exceedingly expensive for per acre. You got NPK. You probably don't need the P or the K. I don't know unless I look at the turf and you see it. But I mean, you know, it's possible you need some phosphorus and potassium. But I can bet the farm you need some nitrogen, and I can almost guarantee you're going to see a response to the application of iron if it's applied at the proper rate, 1 to 5 pounds per acre, something like that. So what's wrong with that? I mean, the one product he has on here that is reasonable to consider is the one he's like, it only has NPK, iron, and manganese in it. It's crazy.
There are other things that we put on the line that don't fall into this category. And I've got this here just as one example because there are many others. You could throw in humic acid, sea kelp. This right here is
I think humic acid is on the PS chart. We'll pull it up at the end.
Cytogrow. This is a product that I'll be putting on the lawn very soon.
So Cytogrow, this is different. This is a hormone. And this is venturing into plant physiology that I am not an expert in. So I'm gonna defer to the professionals on this. But you're going to be applying cytokinins, as Dr. Irvin said. And by the way, I think Dr. Irvin might have been promoted to a dean now. I heard a rumor he was a dean now. He was on the show a couple months ago. And in some specific stressful situations, when cytokinins might be declining in the plant, like if you have a stress that would prevent root growth or somehow inhibit root growth, the application of cytokinins in those particular stress events may be beneficial. That's my interpretation of what Dr. Irvin said, but I would defer to him because I'm not a plant physiologist. I don't know. But this particular product may actually be helpful, but it has to be applied when you have a specific type of stress.
Includes hormones called cytokinins, which the plant, in our case grass, is going to use to stimulate further root development. Now, I think that this is going to be an amazing product, something that I'm very excited to throw into the lawn. And it's also part of my root development strategy, which I'll link to down below. I've got this monster kind of course over on my website that you can take a look at for root development.
Oh God, I've got to do that. I've got to go. This is 4 years ago when he did this video. I've got to go and see if this thing's still up. A course on root development by Brian Mounts. We've got to go over that, guys. We've got to see that.
This is part of the plan, but these do not fall into the trace mineral, trace element category because they're hormones. They are not minerals. They're not elements. They're not nutrients. They are biostimulants. I just wanted to throw that out there. It's kind of in the category of humic acids. They help the plant perform better without actually nourishing the plant. Interesting concept. Anyway, I want to leave it at that.
Well, that actually could be true. I'm not going to deny that. Under some very specific situations, that actually could be true. Like I said, you have to have the right specific type of stress. Now, what I want to do is, I'm not going to go to the. I was going to go to the Down to Earth website to show this product. I'm not going to do that. But what I will show is over on another website called azomite.com, which is not the product he was using, not the brand he was using. It was, it was Down to Earth or something like that, whatever it was. And this particular brand is a different brand. And let me open this up just a little bit so everybody can see the website. I'm going to show a really good example of cherry picking, a fallacy of cherry picking data on this particular website. And it has to do with azomite, which is what he talked about. So on this website, you go to azomite, you can go to studies. Now, under studies, the first two are great anecdotes. Number one is observational spotlights. That's just a whole page full of anecdotes. You could have 1 million anecdotes on that particular slide and study under studies, and it makes zero difference to me. I don't care. Like I said on the show, I guess it was on Monday or maybe last week, go look up the miracle of the sun. The Miracle of the Sun, it was either in Spain or Portugal, and you can actually go pull up the newspaper articles from like 1920s or 30s. It's in a foreign language. But you can read all about the Miracle of the Sun, where there's thousands of people standing out on the hill, and they all saw the sun split into two different suns. Okay, no, they all swore to it. They all saw it. Everybody saw the sun split into two, and there were two suns in our sky. No, obviously that didn't happen. The gravitational pull of two suns would have thrown the entire solar system out of whack. Okay, but these guys were delusional. So when you see stuff like observational spotlights, it's all anecdotes, and there's absolutely no reason to believe any of it. It doesn't matter the quantity or the quality of the anecdote. It makes no difference. It shouldn't have any bearing on whether or not you are convinced that whatever the anecdote is true. Then the next one is customer testimonials. Again, another anecdotes. They're all just a bunch of stories. Okay, they use these because they know the average person is probably not well versed in logical fallacies. And they're going to read that and go, oh, so-and-so put that on his lawn and it looks great, so I'm going to do it. They know that. The average person is, gullible. It's just the way it is. So don't be delusional. These anecdotes and these testimonials and observations are only the beginning. It's an observation, and it should be used as the beginning of the scientific process. It's not the conclusion. But if you go down here to the turf study, if you click on turf study, you're going to come up with a website, or their website, and it's going to have a turf study. So I was reading about this. I'm like, oh, okay. And no, they have a photograph. And the first thing I saw in this photograph was, it looks all the same. It looks the same. Why would they put that on their website? It has untreated controls, and then it has contact DG with their product, with azomite 1 and 1.2 and 2.4. That must be the rates. And I'm looking at it. I'm going, well, I don't really see any difference between these things. So what I did was you'll see this is the exact same thing that I'm looking at here. I pulled it up on a PDF, and you'll see it's the same exact photograph. This is the PDF version. I'm just doing this so I can draw on it. And this is a perfect example of cherry picking. So what companies will do is they'll send out, say, 5 or 10 requests to do research for whoever's they're asking to do, University ABC. In this case, it was Dr. Joe Young at Texas Tech University, who's extremely well respected, very, very good at what he does. And so Dr. Young did some work on this. And what they'll do is they'll show, if there was a favorable result in Dr. Young's study, they'll show that study. Okay. Meanwhile, you don't know as a consumer, they also did it 4 or 5 other locations. I don't know if azomite did that or not, but this is very, very common. They're not going to show the other 4 or 5 locations where nothing happened. Okay. And in this study, really nothing happened. But even in this study, you're going to see an example of cherry picking. It's right over here on the right. It says normalized difference vegetation index, which is the NDVI. That is a measurement of the green reflectance of light, the natural green reflectance of light off the plant. So it's a measurement of greenness of the plant. Index on October 10th for the azomite plots had significantly greater NDVI than the contact DG alone or the untreated plots. Now, on November 10th, well, what happened throughout the entire study? What happened on all the other dates? That is, on a marketing sheet in Turfgrass Science, the definition of cherry picking data. That's what that is. They're not going to show all the other stuff that didn't work. Okay? On their website, I don't even know why. I don't even know why they put this photograph on here, because it looks the exact same. Untreated, contact DG, they all looks fantastic. All very good looking turf. This is probably it looks like it's either on a fairway, it looks like probably. You can read this whole thing if you want to. I'm not going to read the whole thing. But I'm going to go down here and I'm going to show percent green cover as from digital image analysis. You're going to see the control is the black, the contact DG, which is just I think it's like an 18, 7, 18 or so. I can't remember what the analysis of contact DG is, but it has an NP and K in it. And then they have azomite at 1.2 and 2.4 rates in the green and yellow. And you'll see, so I'm not really looking at the black per se, but I'm looking at the red, which is the contact DG because the azomites were applied with contact DG. And you'll see the red line is at the top all the way across. In other words, the application of azomite didn't increase the percent green cover index at all. Okay? None. Except for, I guess, here at the very, very, very end, I suppose this is what they're talking about, October 10th or something, right here, at the very, very end of the study. But this is another trick people will play. I can't remember the name of this flaw. There's a specific name for this flaw, and I can't remember it. I didn't have it pulled up. But what con artists will do is they will fidget with scales. They will pull this up and do it in such a way that it looks really profound. And the example of that is here on the y-axis. Whoops, I keep going the wrong way. Here on the y-axis, where it goes from 75 on the y-axis up to 100. Remember, this is percent green cover, so 100 would be completely green grass. The scale goes from 75 to 100, but in reality, the scale goes from 0 to 100. But if they put it on a scale of 0 to 100, all these lines would be crushed together. You wouldn't see any difference between these. Okay? It goes from 80 to 90% at the very, very end. Everywhere else, it's between, say, 86 and 87 with no end. Well, let's just say, use the contact DG. It goes from 92% up to 96%. So it's between 92 and 96% green cover with the contact DG and with all these azomite products. In other words, they're intentionally skewing your view of the data so it looks compelling or it looks interesting, when in reality there's no difference. You're not going to be able to see the difference, and you can see that on the screen on the photograph. You can't see anything. They're all the same. Okay. The last thing is turfgrass quality. Remember, red is the contact DG, and the azomites are the green and the yellow bars here. And you'll see turfgrass quality is a 6, a little over 6.5. All of them are above 6 on the scale, even including the non-treated control. All of them are above 6, and all of them are below 7.5. So they all fell between 6 and 7.5. And again, the red with contact DG is as good or better than anything else, with the exception of, I guess, a little bit before September. This isn't statistical, but there's a little bit there in one date. Everything else is below the contact DG side, the line. Everything. Okay. So even the control. So even if you go, well, in this particular study, they only applied contact DG alone and they had the azomites by themselves. Well, even the control alone is still fine with nothing. The control alone is 85% green cover, 95% green cover. Down here, it's 6. It goes up as high as 7. The control alone is fine without the azomite stuff. Okay. And here again, once again, you'll see compression of the scale. The scale goes from 1 to 9, and all they show is 5.5 to 7.5. Why? Just like I said, if they showed it from 1 to 9, all these lines would be crushed together. You wouldn't see any difference. Okay. So don't be delusional. This happens day in and day out, all the time. Happens all the time. You run it 1 to 9. We don't see anything going on here. Oh, let's move it on 5.5 to 7.5 scale. Maybe you can see something going on here. Whether it was with contact DG or whether it was with the control, there was essentially no difference from applying the azomite or not applying the azomite. Okay, none. And the only time they actually ever mentioned it was a cherry pick data on when they say October 10th. Okay, so please be aware of that. That happens regularly throughout our industry. And just so you know that I'm going to go to the nutrient deficiency here in a minute. So hang on, guys. That's probably the more important part of today. Just so we're clear, the azomite is this is the SDS from Down to Earth. Azomite, granular, trace minerals 00, and then 0.2. Volcanic ash. And then down here, you'll see ingredients. Volcanic ash, hydrated sodium, calcium, aluminosilicate. Okay. I don't know what's going to happen when you put that in the soil, but that's the point. I don't know what's going to happen when you put that in the soil. I'm pretty sure it's not going to dissolve very much. It's going to remain in an aluminosilicate form in a very, very fine particle. Whether or not you put enough out there to cause a problem, I don't know. Okay, but I would be extremely careful about doing anything like that. I wouldn't do that. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to show... I wasn't sure really where to do this. And after this, I'm going to show the diagnostic checklist for turfgrass BS disorder. But I wanted to, at some point, I wasn't sure really where to fit this in, but I wanted to, let's see, how do I get there to, here. I wanted to show some stuff on micronutrient deficiencies. And I posted a photograph in the community tab that showed some manganese deficiencies. And I haven't gone over that yet. I'm not going to go over that specifically today on how I diagnose that and what the likelihood is of actually that being manganese. There's a criteria that I use and a kind of a stepwise progression that I use to kind of guide me to that direction. But I'll go over that at some point in the future. But for now, what I want to do is show this PDF from the University of Florida, and it's entitled Plant Essential Nutrients and Their Role by Sharma McCrae and Kelly Morgan. Okay. Full disclosure. I mean, I went to school with Kelly. He was doing his PhD when I was doing my PhD at UF, and maybe McCrae is also very, very good. I don't know who Lakesh Sharma is. I mean, he or she may be, I don't know who she is or he is. I'm not sure. Anyway, you can read through this whole article, this whole paper. It's an extension publication called SS AGR 463. You can go download this for free. It's AGR 463. Okay. And this particular PDF is pretty good at having you walk through which leaf is problematic and what the likelihood is that a particular nutrient is deficient as a result of your diagnosis of that leaf. Okay, so we're going to go through. I'm not going to read this whole thing. And by the way, you can see even in academia, you can see this pH solubility chart is in here. Even academicians can be fooled by that chart. Unless it's in here showing that you shouldn't use it. I'm not sure if that's why they have it in here, but they have the pH solubility diagram, which is erroneous and flawed. Unless they're refuting it, they should remove that. Anyway, so we're going to go down to the micronutrients. And on this micronutrients section down here, they're going to go through all the micronutrients and talk about the likelihood of seeing micronutrient deficiencies and what sort of situation is possible to see a micronutrient deficiency. And just real quick, they're talking about it's possible in highly leached acidic sand soils like they do have in Florida, muck soils, which are down in South Florida. You can't see this so much. Hang on a second. And oh gosh, I got to zoom back out. Sorry. Muck soils that are 28%, 20 to 80% organic matter. Those can be micronutrient deficient. Soils with very, very high pHs, like say 8, something like that, you can have micronutrient deficiencies, and or soils that have been intensely cropped. And what I would say in the world of turf grass, that category is almost exclusively reserved for sod production. So soils that have been intensely cropped doesn't really exist in turf, but in sod production, where you're harvesting out, say 3/8 of an inch of soil, you're removing a little bit of soil. With that little bit of soil, there are some micronutrients, and over time, you're going to move down through the topsoil layer and possibly result in some sort of nutrient or micronutrient deficiency. That's very common in sod production. Okay, so now what I want to show, the important part of this whole thing, is over here. There's a figure. It's a figure 4 in this particular PDF, and it's really sort of like a dichotomous key for micronutrient deficiencies. I don't know if I can zoom out and still have this on here. I may have to, let me fidget with this, guys. It's sort of like a dichotomous key for micronutrients. And so it's going to walk you through the leaves and what's the possibility of seeing a micronutrient deficiency and what it might be. So the way you start this off is it says visual tissue assessment, which is what I encourage people to do. A lot of times you'll hear me say, I don't encourage you to take soil tests. I don't encourage you to put out volcanic ash. I don't encourage you to base decisions on some marketing sheet. That's all true. But in this case, I'm encouraging you all to consider this approach whenever you're trying to diagnose nutrient deficiencies. You might be wrong, okay? But it's at least some sort of logical sense or there's good rationale behind your approach. And that is, first look at the turf, okay? And then if you see, oh, it's yellow, well, to you, to a homeowner or to a lawn care operator, whoever, it might look yellow. But now, gaining more and more knowledge, you can actually start to refine your viewpoint and determine, well, what is actually yellow on the plant? That is an indication of a nutrient deficiency. Where it is yellow, is it the first leaf? Is it the second leaf? Is it the last leaf? On the leaf, what does it look like? That is how we diagnose nutrient deficiencies. That's a very, very consistent and reliable method to at least guide you. Now, we can back that up with a soil test if we want to, which will give you further confidence. But we start with this, or I start with this. Visual tissue assessment. And I'm sorry for those people who can't read. If I zoom in, you can read it, but then it kind of takes it off the screen. Oh, no. Oh, here we go. Okay, I think I got it on here now. So visual tissue assessment. What you start with is mobile nutrients. Is the chlorosis or is the yellowing, is it affecting the older leaves or is it affecting the newer leaves? So when they say older leaves, what they're talking about is the lower leaves. So on this diagram, they're talking about this leaf down here at the very bottom. Now, this is looks like a tree leaf or a tree branch or something like that. But in Bermuda grass, in tiff eagle, in whatever, Kentucky bluegrass, and bent grass, whatever, it's all the same. It might not grow like this, like tall fescue. It might be a bunch type grass, but it will still be the oldest leaf. You need to understand which leaf on the plant is the newer leaf compared to which one is the oldest leaf. So is the chlorosis occurring on the lower leaves? If it is, then you move down. If you say yes, then you move down. If it's the older leaf, we as a soil scientist and a plant scientist, I know if it's on the older leaves, then the element is going to be mobile in the plant. Why is that? When the new leaf comes out from the crown of the plant, the leaf's going to emerge from the top of the plant. It's going to need nutrients. Okay, the nutrients are coming in through the plant, into the xylem, but it can also be reallocated from older leaves and moved into the newer leaves to supply the need of that element. Well, if the element is not mobile, then you'll see the deficiency occur on the newer leaves first. If it is mobile, the plant will pull nutrients from the older leaves first to supply the element to the newer leaves. So you'll see the deficiency on the older leaves if the element is mobile in the plant. So anytime I see the plant and I go, it's the older leaves, I know immediately it's either potassium or nitrogen or something that's mobile, phosphorus, something that's somewhat mobile in the plant. If it's on the newer leaves and you're not going to see anything on the older leaves, then you know it's going to be things like iron or manganese or something like that. Okay, that's a general process. That's the general process. So if you see the older leaves are chlorotic, being the ones down here at the bottom, then you move down. You say yes. Then it says effects mostly generalized, plants dark or light green. If it's mostly generalized, you say yes, and the plants are dark or light green, you say yes. If they're not dark or light green, then you go this way. You go say no, and you move over to this box right here. Okay, and you just follow this through. Magnesium and potassium deficiencies can sort of they can sometimes be conflated. Even someone like myself can sometimes be incorrect about that. I'll just say magnesium is very rare. Potassium is more common. But they're both sort of similar in terms of they're both mobile. They're both on the lower plant parts of the plant, and they both show up very similarly initially. Whereas magnesium is going to be more of the intraveinal chlorosis, and potassium is going to be from the margins in. So you need to know this sort of the criteria. See potassium over here. You see the effect is occurring on the outer edge of the leaf and moving in, whereas magnesium is occurring in a sort of an intraveinal chlorosis type of manifestation. But they're both on older leaves. Nitrogen is going to be more of an overall consistent yellowing color. Okay. Chlorine and molybdenum, you don't really need to worry about. Those are the other two that would be considered, but you don't need to worry about those because the turfs or the soil is going to supply all of those. Phosphorus is the other one. And that's very easy to see. You're going to see some purpling and sort of a grayish purplish hue to the turf. You'll see that, but it'll be on the older leaves as you see here on this plant, on this diagram. Okay. If you see this on the newer leaf, then it may just be a genetic situation where the plant is purple, like some bahia grasses are purple now. But if it's on the older leaves on a plant that's not prone to having a little purplish hue to it, then it's very likely a phosphorus deficiency. So let's get to the point where we're talking about today. We're talking about micronutrients. When the first step is there chlorosis on the older leaves? If it's yes, you go here. If it's no, then you follow this arrow, which moves it down to this diagram down below. And now we're talking about micronutrient deficiencies. You'll notice on this diagram, all these nutrient deficiencies, with the exception of calcium, are micronutrient deficiencies, and they're all on newer leaves because these elements are not mobile. The plant is not going to pull them from older leaves to supply the nutrient demand of the newer leaves. Calcium is the exception. Calcium is macronutrient, but it doesn't move at all in the plant really. Okay, so then you get down to here and it says you're on newer leaves and it says, okay, the growing point or the terminal dies. In other words, the top of the plant, the top leaf is dead. So you look at that and you go, well, no, it's not dead. So the growing point typically stays alive. Okay, so growing point typically stays alive. Yes, okay. Chlorosis with or without intraveinal chlorosis. And that's what I was talking about on that photograph that I showed on the community tab. It's not just that it's intraveinal chlorosis. That's part of it. But it matters which leaf it's on. If it is intraveinal, meaning if it looks like this striping effect on this leaf, then you say, yes, chlorosis without intraveinal chlorosis. So if it's with intraveinal chlorosis, then you go over here, sorry. So you go to this box. If it's without, then you go down to this box and you just keep following the chart down. Okay. Now, if you have these deficiencies and you do not see intraveinal chlorosis, I can almost guarantee you on newer leaves, and really if it's severe enough on the whole plant, it's sulfur. If it's just a clean, uniform chlorosis on newer leaves, but it can also be nitrogen because nitrogen and sulfur are forever linked. But it's almost guaranteed to be sulfur or nitrogen. What I mean by that is, see this leaf right here that has sulfur? See how it's just completely yellow? There's no pattern to it. That's an indication of sulfur, but it can also be an indication of nitrogen as well. So it's either nitrogen or sulfur, resolved with ammonium sulfate, or urea and an application of potassium sulfate. Some form of sulfate will resolve that. Okay? You're going to be applying nitrogen most of the time anyway, so it's probably not a nitrogen deficiency. It's probably a sulfur deficiency. Okay. That's if that's sulfur. You almost will. I've never seen a response. I've never seen a copper deficiency, so I wouldn't worry about that. So if it's on a newer leaf and it's completely flat and smooth and there's no pattern, it's almost guaranteed to be sulfur, especially under normal management practices where you're already applying nitrogen. If it's not flat and smooth and consistent yellowing, and you say younger leaves with interveinal chlorosis right here, and you say, yep, it does have interveinal chlorosis, you go right here, sharp, distinct. If it's sharp and distinct, then it's probably iron. If it's not sharp and distinct, then it's probably manganese. Okay, manganese oftentimes comes with some chlorotic dots. I'm not sorry, not chlorotic, necrotic spots on the leaf. That is often accompanied with manganese deficiency, which is also on the photo that I showed on St. Augustine grass on the community tab. Oftentimes you'll see manganese deficiencies, which is shown here with striping occasionally, but it'll have little spots on it. Okay, so this is what I would recommend you all consider viewing or reviewing when it comes to if you're interested. Well, how do I know this or how do I know that? This is where I would start. I would start, or a document like this. I mean, maybe not. You don't necessarily have to go to this document, but a document like this. This is very succinct, very short. It's only 2 or 3 pages, and it has a diagram in there that you can use to at least give you some sort of indication as to what might be going on. Okay. Now, I wouldn't base all my decisions off of this chart. I use it as a diagnostic tool. I look at it and I go, okay, that on a newer leaf, it's pretty striped up and it has some spots on it. It's probably either iron or manganese, and I'm going to go probably to a soil test. Now, in the meantime, the end user probably doesn't want to wait for my response to come back. They might just go out there and just spray out whatever. That's up to you. But I can tell you, if it's on a newer leaf, I can tell you it's probably not potassium. It's probably not phosphorus. Okay, it could be nitrogen, but if it's striped up, it's probably not. It's probably iron or manganese. So some basic understanding. I'm not saying you have to go take a plant physiology class and spend 4 years trying to learn what the physiology is behind iron oxidation and reduction in the plant to figure out why it's striped up. You don't need to do that. Okay, just use this. It can at least orient you in probably a more accurate direction than just going blind. Okay. If you see this, which is what I do, if you see this and you go, okay, there's a little bit of striping, it's on a newer leaf, you're going to see it every time in that area. In other words, it's not going to be like, oh, I found one leaf that was striped on the top of the plant, and then over there I didn't see any. You're going to see, if it's chlorotic, you're going to see a very consistent. You go out and do it. You guys all know where there's some chlorotic areas on your lawns or your sport turf or your golf course, even on Tiff Eagle. It's something extremely, extremely small. Even those little leaves that are the size of a grain of rice, you will still see this. And I believe, I'm not mistaken, I have photographs of Tiff Eagle showing this exact thing. You may have to pull a runner out and then actually see exactly which leaf you're looking at. Make sure that you're looking at the proper leaf, but you will see it. And you will see it regularly, over and over. It's going to be that way in that particular area all the time. Okay? So it's, if you haven't done it, it's kind of interesting to do. Next time you're out there, if it's tall fescue, you have to understand how the bunch grasses grow. They grow in a bunch rather than a runner. But you have to identify which leaf and then identify the pattern on the leaf. And then hopefully if you have a soil test, that can help guide you. Because in this particular case, I'm convinced that it's manganese because I also have a soil test, which is right here. It's just coincidental that it happened to be sitting right here. I was talking to the client yesterday. In this particular case, the manganese is like 10, 11 parts per million, Malic 3. Pounds per acre. 10 or 11 pounds per acre. So it's in single digits parts per million, which is not, I'm not overly concerned about this one, 6 pounds per acre. So we're talking with very, very low manganese levels coupled with a turfgrass showing what I am convinced is a manganese deficiency in the leaves. This is starting to build the case where I'm like, you know what? You might want to go out with manganese sulfate, like a pound of manganese per acre or higher, whatever, 1 to 2 pounds, 3 pounds per acre. And just include that in your granular fertilizer, which like I said earlier, manganese sulfate in granular can be beneficial. Unlike iron, you can't do that with iron. With manganese, you can, or you're going to have to spray it out. And in this case, it's a sod producer, so he's going to have to do it through a center pivot or in his granular fertilizer. Okay, so this is the method that I use, and it doesn't take, it's not like so cumbersome, like, oh, I can't do that, doc, and I'm just going to go out. It's not that big a deal. Once you've seen it and you know what to look for, it's just, you go out and you see it, you'll see it. It's like a foreign language or riding a bike. I mean, yes, it's hard to learn how to ride a bike, but once you learn how to ride a bike, it's the same thing over and over and over. It's not particularly complicated. And you guys are looking at a lot more turf than I'm looking at. So you have a lot of examples out there that you can kind of go, oh, I'm going to pull that up, and don't pull the leaf off, but I mean, pull the runner back and start looking at which leaf they show up. And you're going to go, well, son of a gun. It is the newest leaf on all these runners, or it is the oldest leaf on all these runners. Okay. Okay, so that's my spiel on that. I'm going to be back later tonight. Oh, no, I'm going to actually do this real quick. I'm going to do the Turfgrass Epistemology BS criteria. I forgot. I don't want to miss this. So we talked about the BS criteria a couple of weeks ago. This is actually on a shirt now in the YouTube store. You can go to my store, and this is on the back of a shirt, as well as some other BS content if you want to buy some shirts and support the channel. But this is the Turfgrass Epistemology Diagnostic Criteria for Turfgrass Bullshit Disorder. And I'm using this as a scientific word. I'm not using this as a derogatory word. And through here, you can go in here, you can check all these boxes to see if you're dealing with a BS artist or not. And I want to say, Brian mentioned, well, first of all, micronutrient package. He mentioned that. So micronutrient package, that's guaranteed. He got that on there. What else did he mention? He didn't mention any of this. He did not mention any of this. Oh, he did. Oh, here it is. This helps increase soil structure. He mentioned it'll help soil structure. So that's 2. And we need 3 before he can be accurately diagnosed with turfgrass BS disorder. I don't see a third one. So nutrients are locked up. Granular iron. He didn't mention that. Yeah, he didn't mention anything else. So he has 2 out of the criteria, but he does not have a third one. So we cannot diagnose Brian from that video with turfgrass BS disorder. Although you will see in a future video, I'm just giving you pulling back the curtain a little bit, you will see him talk about liquid dethatch. And his Dunning-Kruger is so strong with him that not only is he convinced that liquid aeration works, he's convinced that he can create his own liquid dethatch, liquid aeration and liquid dethatch products in his house. So we're going to get to that video at some point in the future. Okay, guys. So tonight I will be back and we'll be going over some PGR stuff on traffic. So the idea is that PGRs reduce vertical growth, but they may enhance lateral growth. And if they do enhance lateral growth, is that going to be beneficial in terms of recovering from turf grass damage from traffic? In this case, on a soccer field, or they're replicating soccer cleats and damage from soccer. Okay? So look for that tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I really appreciate everybody showing up. I didn't see any questions. Thanks for the email, Joe. I'll look at the email on that article. And oh yeah, and Joe Kyle said at the beginning, micros should be added. I just showed you, micros are on there, Joe, on the BS criteria. They are, as I just showed. You need a good micronutrient package. They're on there. CV Hobo. I remember CVO Hobo. Yeah, you're one of the names that's fun to say. Says, I was one of the victims until I started watching Dr. Shaddox. I've gone from 20 jugs of mystery juice to 1 jug of 26O. Yeah. I'm going to end up going over a comments and email section the last show of the year, which is like December 16th or 17th or something like that. And there are some emails on there that are just so profoundly just good. I mean, it just really keeps me motivated. Every now and then I'm like, do I want to do it again? But then I get an email. I'm like, man, that is really good information that I know people are having a beneficial response to the content I produce, and they're changing their behaviors, and they're seeing that, we can follow these management practices. We don't have to follow this BS, and we don't have to follow all this nonsense. And so I will be going over some of these emails that have been very, very flattering and just reinforcing that we're doing the right thing. We're on the right track here in terms of getting out the information and helping people be more efficient at what they're doing. All right, guys, that's all I got. Thanks so much. I'll see you in about 10 or 11 hours. Have a good day. Bye.